Hey Vati, when are you making that Lady Maria Prepare to Cry episode? It's a great story and it'd be nice to see it sometime this year. Haha, thanks man.
Did you guys know that Half-Light isn't wearing pants? It's true. Half-Light is supposed to be wearing the loincloth found in the Earthen Peak ruins, which gives him the wraps and the boots that you see in his concept art. Instead, he's left with the default white shorts, which makes it literally unplayable, but anyway, strangely, the game's code does mark him as having a helmet, which doesn't show up because it doesn't exist. So we think someone at From Software probably went to remove the mistaken helmet entry, but deleted his pants instead. The other secrets are better. Like this one. At some point, it seems that From Software experimented with an overhead blocking animation in Dark Souls 3, which might have been good, I guess, for surviving certain dragon bridge encounters, but it probably wasn't deemed important enough to have its own dedicated button. But what's more interesting is that it seems they also experimented with crouched, stealthy movement in the game. I assume what this would have been is you press L3 and you reduce your aggro range, like in Sekiro. And, there are a few sections of the game where I could kind of see this working, but this idea needs to be really integrated with the map design to be fully realized. Without having low walls, high grass, or tunnels to crawl through, this idea probably didn't exist for long in development. But after playing Sekiro, I feel really strongly that stealth, as well as jumping and swimming, should be a part of the future of this series. Ages ago, we speculated on how Sekiro might have been a sort of testing ground for a lot of the concepts that I think could end up really diversifying the gameplay of Elden Ring and all of their games like Dark Souls in the future. Speaking of the future of this series, I'd like to announce a new displate design. Future Souls is this envisioning of what a sci-fi Souls game might look like, and now it sits alongside the painted world as two really sleek metal prints that you can add to your collection. There's more on the way, link in the description, and I'll talk more about it at the end of the video. As Aldrich consumed the god of the Dark Moon, he dreamt of Priscilla, who was hiding in a painted world. This dream allowed him to cast a phantom version of her life hunt scythe. Basically, he dreamt up a kind of miracle, but the scythe isn't the only weapon that he dreamt up. Another is Nito's Gravelord Greatsword, which is attached to the end of the staff that he attacks with, and Gravelord Greatsword was also a miracle in the original Dark Souls. Well, turns out, Aldrich also has an unused animation for thrusting his weapon into the ground, which, along with this visual effect, confirms that Aldrich was originally supposed to cast a sort of Gravelord sword dance during the boss fight. Dark Souls 3's bosses saw a lot of changes during development, not just to their movesets, but to their entire characters. For example, the reference files call Osiris Dragon Angel, and he was originally meant to occupy this cut area of the game that was called God's Grave. It was a catacombs-like area that ended up having a lot of its assets repurposed for the Ringed City. In Osiris's place stood the character that we know now as Gundyr, and you might remember that from these leaked screenshots way back. But more than the boss fight just taking place here, it's likely that Gundyr was actually designed to be a former king of Lothric, just like Osiris was. His helmet does say that it was modelled after a former king, so the fact that it's modelled after a former king is either a reference to his former role in-game, or it could also just be a reference to old King Doran from Demon Souls. In early trailers for the game, Wolnir appears in the profaned capital instead of the catacombs. Again, this makes a ton of environmental sense, since Wolnir was a conqueror who pillaged other lands, and Yhorm's boss room is piled full of treasure, the most powerful artifacts of which Wolnir is wearing and wielding himself. And this begs the question, if Wolnir was here, then where was Yhorm supposed to be? Well, one unverified leak suggests that Yhorm was supposed to be the game's tutorial boss, which is possible because the Untended Graves actually has a giant coffin right at the tutorial boss arena. But if that were true, then what would the Storm Ruler have been used for? Well, in front of Yhorm is a message that reads, "Only a storm can fell a greatwood," which is pretty cryptic. On one hand, it could be referencing a Greek proverb which goes, "A reed before the wind lives on, while mighty oaks do fall," which seems to suggest that the Storm Ruler can fell tall enemies. But it's also possible that the Storm Ruler was never meant for Yorn, and was instead intended for the actual Greatwood boss in the game. Either way, they probably should have used this other message that we found in the game files instead. In the next stage of development, the Untended Graves area had 3 different world states, and each one of them had a different boss. So Gundyr was supposed to occupy the default tutorial area, and then there was a world state called the Eroded World State, and in here was supposed to be an enemy called Evil Spirits, which had the reference name Snake Soul, and while the character file for Snake Soul was erased, the audio remains. And it matches the audio for the Pus of Man enemies in Lothric. All of this calls to mind another early leaked screenshot of Dark Souls 3 that you might remember, where we can see an enormous black snake looming over this desolate landscape. Chances are this is a sort of dreg heap, and chances are this is the second boss of the Untended Graves, the Evil Spirits, or Snake Soul, an abyssal creature which appears to be leaking from the giant dark sign in the sky. Huge props to Lance MacDonald for teaching us about these world states initially. But the Snake Soul isn't the only fascinating reference name. In fact, there's this really long list of names that served as placeholders for early versions of NPCs. Slave Knight Gale, for example, once had the placeholder name Yupa Sama, which is almost certainly a reference to the Lord Yupa character from Studio Ghibli's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Like Gale, Yupa is an old, cloaked traveler who spends his days searching tirelessly for something that he thinks is immensely important to the future of the world. Even the painter has a kind of parallel in Nausicaa herself, making this movie, which you should watch by the way, it's amazing, making it an undeniable inspiration for the From Software team. The next point pertains to Filianor, the hidden daughter of Gwyn that we found at the end of the Ringed City DLC. She has the reference name Wife. Thus, it's very likely that instead of as a daughter, she was initially designed as Gwyn's wife, the identity of whom fans have been speculating on since the original Dark Souls. It would have been nice to finally have revealed her identity, but in the end it's possible that From Software valued that fan speculation over putting a concrete definition of the wife character into the game. And I have to admit, it definitely is sadder to think that Gwyn would sequester his youngest daughter away in the Ringed City until the end of time. The locust of the Ringed City was called Abaddon, which is a Hebrew name used in the Bible for both a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss. In the New Testament, I read that the angel called Abaddon is described as the king of an army of locusts, and I don't think I have to tell you how good a name that is for the locust preacher. In the Dark Souls design works, Miyazaki details a part of the design process that was behind creating the 4 Knights of Gwyn, so Ornstein, Artorias, Ciaran, and Goff, except he doesn't mention them at all. Instead, he talks about Executioner Smol and the Channeler, who the team was encouraged to refer to as 4KnightC and 4KnightD, and this was done in the hopes that it would eventually inspire the creation of Knights A and B. In the end, of course, neither Smol or the Channeler ended up as Knights of Gwyn, but Smol's item descriptions do at least reference that he came close to being one. If only he didn't have that gruesome habit of grinding the bones of his victims into his food. The reference name for the evangelists in Dark Souls 3 is Valignano, which is almost certainly a reference to Alessandro Valignano, a Jesuit missionary whose job it was to convert locals in East Asia to Jesus' teachings. And he went about this in a controversial way by encouraging his missionaries to do things like learn the language and the customs in order to better ingratiate the Jesuits with the population. Like Valignano, it was the evangelist's job to travel to foreign places like the undead settlement, and in this case the undead were set on a path of sacrifice. This road of sacrifices led to Aldrich the Devourer, back when he was still settled in the Cathedral of the Deep. For his reference name, Aldrich used to be called Sullivan, and in turn, Sullivan was originally destined for greater things. The Pontiff is a very significant character in Dark Souls 3's lore. Not only is he the master of sorceries, miracles, fire, and the deep, but he also managed to usurp an age-old kingdom, and he also managed to feed a god to a Lord of Cinder so he could supplant the Age of Fire. Therefore, it really should come as no surprise that he originally had a way more important role in the game. He was the final boss, and the reference files call him BlackOldKing, and his arena was in the 3rd version of the Untended Graves. And if he was positioned where the soul of Cinder now stands, he might have even had extra time to pull off this cut animation for buffing his 2 swords. We're able to view this and all animations now in a program called Anim Studio, which is something that's developed by someone called Meow Maritus, and it displays really well all the animations and hitboxes in these games. From has stated multiple times just how much attention they give to all of their animations, just in order to make them readable to the player, and this program really well shows just how painstaking that process must be. Other cut animations include the Backflip. This is a bit of a callback to the Darkwood Grain Ring of the original Dark Souls, and funnily enough, it's actually performed by the soul of Cinder, which really helps us confirm that he's just a larger version of us, and also an amalgamation of all of the katana-wielding Dex flip builds that linked the fire way back then. Next, let's talk Covenants. There are some good ones in Dark Souls 3, but a lot of them feel a little bit tacked on, and turns out From had dozens of preset phantom colors at their disposal so that they could quickly flip through and suit whatever Covenant color combination they wanted. In addition, Dark Souls 3 also has a cut item called the Spirit Amethyst, which was likely used to track the corresponding colors of the spirits in your world. This would have been pretty useful, but it is yet another advantage for the host. But you know the best thing that's come out of all these different spirit colors? It's this JoJo mod by Zullie that lets you capture enemy NPCs and attack with them as your stands. I'm gonna be playing that one on stream soon. One enemy that almost made it into the game as an enemy stand, basically, is Silver Knight Ledo. The cut Proof of a Pact item claims that it briefly summons him, and the animations that spawn here are really varied. They have different swing speeds, different amounts of swings and delays, etc. But what we don't know is exactly how he spawned. Was it from a projectile? Did he spawn behind your enemies? Did he summon on your player character to defend you? All of these solutions are kind of clunky, so I can kind of see why this item might have been cut. And we started this video with an incredible revelation, you know, so let's end it with one as well. Have you ever wondered what lies underneath Anri's headcloth in this scene? Did the devs just place the cloth over her head, or did they make the head invisible? Well, neither. Almost all of the details here were originally discovered by Zullie the Witch, who is a must-follow, honestly. She regularly posts these fascinating pieces of trivia, like the secrets in the video, and it was a lot of fun partnering up with her today. Please check out her YouTube and her Twitter in the description. Before I go, I want to quickly talk about the displate that I mentioned earlier. So this is Future Souls 1.0, and it was created in collaboration with Frankoyevich, an incredible artist. We created this chaotic world that's overrun by enemy AI and filled with the husks of knights that have given up at the safety of a checkpoint. They've sort of plugged into the checkpoint and found it so addictive and safe to sort of stay there instead of facing the terrifying world around them. But one knight remains. So, like with all my merch, there are some really subtle references to the Soulsborne series. See if you can spot them if you end up getting the print. And I continue to be super impressed by Displate. Again, they're easy to hang without damaging your walls, the color accuracy and the metallic luster of the print is really good, and getting this huge thing shipped to your door is just a really fun experience. I personally recommend getting a large matte print, but here are some of the options that they offer, and you should get what best suits your room. Thank you, as always, for watching, and I'll see you next time.